It's not
Why do you
letting
have
me.
to enter a password? I just clicked on the link. What are you doing differently?
Yeah,
Well, I
the
need
link
video,
should-
so I have to do it on my phone. I've been trying to use a different camera. It's been failing miserably, so I've just been using my phone.
Oh,
Yeah.
Hmm.
And the
Okay.
phone asks you for a password, and Mantua capital and lowercase 1898 is not letting me in. But I'll continue
Well,
to
it
try.
should
Don't hold up the
be in
proceedings of my
the,
account.
okay. Oh, yeah, we're probably gonna be changing the meeting ID anyway for council. So it'll probably have a new password. Hang
all
on,
right.
kids.
Are we good to start now?
Yeah, it says it's going, so I'm gonna take its word for it.
Okay, well, I'll call it to order at 6 o'clock. Jenny, roll call
Dave,
here.
Ben,
Here.
Matt.
Here.
Anybody watching that you can see, Michelle?
No, nobody
Okay.
is.
All right, so no citizens. We have a motion to accept the minutes from the May finance meeting.
So moved.
I will second.
Ah,
Aye.
Aye.
There we go. Jenny, financial reports.
Okay. Fund status, we're in pretty good shape right now. I'm kind of watching our revenues, and so far we're doing okay. I know a
Mhm.
lot of places are really noticing a hit, but so far I'm not seeing it. Cash summary, we didn't have any adjustments. Revenues were 173,937. I think a lot of that is still income tax money coming in. Payments, combined operating and payroll were 146,993, with the biggest expenses being, we paid for our road salt, which is the whole year's worth. You know, it's all
Okay.
paid
I
once a
figured
year.
that's what that was. I saw that big number. I figured that
Yep.
that's what that.
That and the EnviroLink.
Right.
And for the bills list, I don't know if you had a chance to look at that yet, but we actually have 2 months worth of EnviroLink. Just the
Yep.
way that they happen to fall, we got 2 of those. The credit card report, Dave's credit card is the only one that had an invoice for May, and that actually came in really late because they were giving us new cards and stuff. But and I'll still send that to you, but it was just maybe a little bit of tools, a couple things that they did to remodel the shop down there, and it wasn't anything unusual. And our revenues and appropriation status reports both look pretty good. They're on track, and there were no adjustments on the bank reconciliation.
Okay.
Did anybody have any questions on those?
No, I
motion.
didn't.
Motion to move the finance report to council.
Yeah, so
I'll
moved.
second that.
You want me to do
There.
roll call, or do you guys usually just say all in favor? But I'll do roll call if you want.
We usually just say aye.
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 The ayes have it.
There you go.
Bill's a resolution. I reviewed and had nothing on these.
I reviewed it and I didn't have any issue either.
Nor did I.
Motion to
Bill.
move the bills of resolution to council.
Second. Like Ben says,
Ah,
have a bill, you pay a bill.
that's right.
Is that you're saying, Ben?
I said, that's right. You make it, you pay it.
All right, for legislation, short list tonight, ordinance 2020-20 amended, an ordinance approving and adopting a permanent budget for 21 for the Village of Mantua after publication and public budget hearing pursuant to Ohio Revised Code 5705.30. This will be final reading. And resolution 20.
We've been over
anything
this
there?
enough.
Sorry,
we
Ben?
do,
I said we've been over this and over this and over this. We've been
Oh, yeah.
over it enough.
but we
Yeah.
do have our required budget hearing at
Right.
6:15 next Tuesday, just before council. Takes
Right.
about 3 minutes.
Thank you.
Okay. And then resolution 2020-25, a resolution requesting Manaway's share of funds from the Portage County Coronavirus Relief Distribution Fund and declaring an emergency. Do we know what that is in terms of revenue amount? Any idea?
Well, the only thing Joe said that we're renting a machine to sterilize places in the, the village, in our building, in the service garage and whatnot, for $350 a month. And then if I use the estimated guesses from Rita, I sent that out in an email and I don't have it in front of me, but they're saying anywhere from 10 to 20%. So that could be between
20% of what?
Of our annual, which is close to it's $660,000 is what we budgeted for tax revenues.
Okay.
So anywhere from 66,000 to 132,000 for that. Local government funds is kind of hard to say. I mean, they're down a little bit, but I just don't know. I mean, I did the application, I did the paperwork that we have to do to qualify for this, but as far as the grant application itself, we'll have to work on something together, and it might even be too soon. I don't even think we can do it yet. I think we just had to register, which we've done.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think the state's actually finalized the legislation. If they have, haven't heard about it. And there's a list of how much is going to get distributed to Portage County. And I don't know that it was a huge amount. I'm trying to find it. Well, it doesn't really matter. I can have it by council if you guys really want to know.
Yeah, I was just curious. Just wondering how much we had to work with there.
And I'm not sure that they're going to compensate us for lost income tax revenue, or if it's just out of pocket expenses, like you had to buy something.
Okay.
So I don't know. I guess we could apply for everything and see what they send us, but I'm not sure how it's going to work.
Is it just, because I'm not familiar with how that works, is it just a percentage share of a total pool, or is it based upon expenditures as a result of coronavirus that are reimbursable?
Reimbursable expenses, correct. If you look at the legislation, it has those 3 criteria for an expense that's valid.
Okay.
So it has to meet those 3 things.
Okay, so that's listed there in section 1. I see. Okay.
Yeah, we could charge the Zoom meetings.
Yeah, you can charge the reimbursement for Zoom, which is $16 a month, and Joe's machine.
So this is simply to open the door to us receiving the funds, but then we have to submit a request for reimbursement for specific events or expenditures.
Expenditures.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Okay. Anything else on that one? No. All right.
Nope.
Discussions. First of all, one was a Manline billing problem. I had this one added, and thankfully, it's not as big of an issue as we had anticipated, but I wanted it brought up in finance because when I first heard about it, it sounded as if it was going to be much more significant than it was. So I guess there were some issues in regard. I talked to John, and I spoke to Marianne earlier today. There were some issues in regard to reading of meters at Manline. One was the high flow, one was the low flow, and long story short, one meter reading for a period of several years, I guess, we were only billing them for 1/10 of their usage, and the other one we were billing them for 10x their usage. Correct me, Mayor, I think you've been closer to this than me. So Marianne was trying to reconcile, if there's any back amount owed, but the conversation I had with her today made it sound as if it was really a human error, and it'd be really difficult to kind of go back and definitively quantify whatever overage or underage they might be responsible for. So the only reason I wanted to bring it up is if this happened once, it could happen again, or it could have already happened again. And I know we're getting new meters and it's going to take care of any potential problems like this. But I just want to make sure we've got checks and balances in place that if we see some, discrepancy in billing on anything, someone is kind of raising a red flag and we're trying to catch it immediately rather than several years after the fact. So, I mean, it may just be a talking point, but there should be, some sort of action, I would think, to come out of this. Mayor, do you care to chime in with anything from your perspective?
Just that when John and Marianne and I have talked about it, Michelle was included in several of the conversations. Now she has checked any of the businesses or schools that have compound meters to make sure that they were being done correctly. There was another one that there was a small issue with, but what happened with Manline was they got swapped. Apparently you subtract 10% or 10 times off of one and multiply 10 times the other to come up with your reading. Somehow it's somehow a digit got dropped during the readings of it. And so now that it's been caught, and it'll, one of the safeguards will be the new meter because it's going to generate the usage anyhow.
Right. Are we fairly confident that the village did not suffer a measurable loss in revenue as a result of the error?
Marianne has done a couple of graphs that show different things. She could do a more detailed report if someone, if John or council asked her to show, but as she told you, I think today when you guys were discussing it, was that there's no way 100% proof. It would kind of be a he said,
Yeah.
she said type
Yeah.
of thing.
Yeah.
I mean, for ourselves, we need to, if council decides that they want to go down that slippery slope, and it could be,
Yeah, I know.
Yeah,
I
it
know.
could be. We might end up owing them money.
Who knows? I just know that water and sewer is under the microscope in this community, and I certainly wouldn't want the community to think that the village was being negligent in some way in the proper collection of revenue, and that's what put us in this predicament. You know what I mean? I just don't want that sort of thing to happen within the village.
Right.
So whatever we can do to mitigate any big problem as a result of this would be a good idea.
Yeah, I guess that would be my question is do we have an idea if Manaline's been, undercharged or have they been overpaying for the past X number of years? I think some analysis should be done to determine that a little bit.
It might be best to leave it alone. We might end up owing them money.
Yeah, that too.
I know, that's why I'm kind of wrestling with this, but I thought we should at least talk about it and decide if it requires any action or if we just acknowledge it, there was a mistake made and ensure it's corrected moving forward.
Well, it's corrected now because they got it. They're corrected. Right.
Right.
Yeah.
While I'm thinking about it, I did get a notice that Manline is going to be, business is very slow for them right now. They're going to be closed June 13th to the 28th, July 3rd to the 12th, and July 18th to the 26th.
Ooh.
Yeah, that's
Wow.
not good.
No.
Wow. All right, so maybe we'll just have Marianne do not necessarily a deep dive, but at least some I don't even know.
Preliminary analysis.
Yeah, something like that, Matt. Just
Well, I think she does have something to that
okay.
degree.
Okay.
She had done a chart that she had sent to John and I and Michelle to
Okay.
try
So
and explain where we were at.
okay, I wouldn't mind reviewing that and seeing if we need to do anything more with it or not.
Okay.
Yeah, I like to see that too.
Okay. All right. Here we go. Mayor, Cemetery Endowment and Trust. Next topic.
Well, I'm hoping that everybody read this. It was discussed at service. And I did not have a narrative at that time, and I think everybody's head was spinning.
As if it's still not.
Only because there wasn't a narrative to keep it on track. So we
Yeah.
kept kind of circling around. I think that this narrative is pretty straightforward. Starting with the mowing, that everybody knows that I had asked Jenny for the last 4 years, and we find out that we have almost $7,000 in excess. I think that we should decide what kind of letter we need to send to Mr. Lombardi, who handles the trust. I think if I recall, Matt didn't, on this portion, didn't service say that they were in favor of letting Mr. Lombardi know that we've realized that with the seasons changing and not having quite as many mows up until this year, that we could reduce the amount of mows that we are doing.
Yes, that's 100% correct.
Okay. I mean, this year so far, the mower has been on a 7-day cycle up there, and at least once a week, right the day usually before he mows, someone receives a call from a resident, whether it be Matt or Scott or myself, about the mowing. So he's going to try and get us on a 5-day schedule as long as it keeps growing the way it's growing. So there, again, we might go up a couple mows. I mean, I figure by July, it's probably going to slow down a little bit and be drier, and we won't want to burn it up. So if you guys, at council, I'll ask, and you guys can determine, what type of a letter you want me to send to him. Do we want to just ask him, does he want us to keep the overage and reduce whatever we ask for next year, or does he want us to return it so he can get it back into investments on that?
That's good. Just do that. That's fine.
Yep, give him the option.
Either he'll do it or not do it. Either way, it doesn't matter. One way or the other is good.
Well, we probably should have been doing an accounting every year with the trust, because we do have one project, and it's not in the letter, just because it came up in a conversation yesterday. They had given us $4,000 to repair or replace the doors on the mausoleum. We received that money, and that project is still not done. So, but that would not be any part of the mowing, because Jenny was just calculating the mowing. So there is still $4,000 outstanding. When John True and I spoke about it the other day, we decided it was time that the person that was given the job to do it be told, we're going to find somebody else so we can get it done.
Butch is awful busy.
Since 2014.
I know. I agree.
So that's where we're at there. So you guys can make that recommendation when it comes up at council next week.
Okay.
Yeah, do it.
Okay. I mean, I'll have to ask, because it's going to take all 6 of you before I do it. Then we move on to the cemetery trust.
Right.
First, you see the section that explains about the Thompson Trust.
Yes.
And what the Thompson Trust is supposed to pay for is for the family members of the Thompsons.
Right.
And they've been gracious enough to let us request things like when we did the drainage up there, when we paved the roads, when we did the mausoleum, pressure wash it and seal it, cutting down trees, repairing the roof on the mausoleum. And I'm sure that there's many things. Oh, they paid for a portion of, I don't remember the exact amount of the plow truck. They paid for a portion of the mini excavator. They made a one-time payment on the cruiser. So, I mean, they've been very generous to us over the years with the Thompson money.
Okay.
So like I say, that one's been very good. But then what happened at the cemetery this year when Cookie and Dave were up there getting everything ready for Memorial Day, a couple approached them and they said that they were family members. They lived over in Kent of the Coits, and they were questioning the flowers on the grave because they thought that the plot was smaller, the planting was smaller than it usually was. They asked if we had run out of money up there for the Coit Trust. And also they said that they couldn't get into the mausoleum, that they had members that they were going to go in and visit and couldn't get their key to open the door. So that's another reason why we need to get the door fixed. Because I think it might be the same key. I think that the door is just off kilter. See, and that's what happened. I'm going to try and stick to. So anyhow, so Cookie contacted me and said she had this lady's name and number. And did we still have a trust? And I said, well, I thought I vaguely remembered something from years ago. And so I came and looked in my office and found something. And then I contacted Jenny to ask her about it. But back in 2009, I think that was Jenny's first year, if I recall. And I was still in the audience being a pain. That Donna Hawkins had made a request from the cemetery, from the courts to terminate the Coit Trust. And after all that was done, we received a lump sum check for $4,800 and some cents. And when I asked Jenny, she said it was put into the cemetery fund. And I didn't, Ben, you might remember this from back in 2009. I remember Donna talking about it going to be done. I don't remember at a meeting, and I didn't attend 100% of the meetings back then, but I came to quite a few. But, Jenny put the money where she was told to put it by Donna. But
That was the only place to put it.
Yeah, we could only put it in the cemetery.
We could
And
only
it was,
put
it was actually Kevin Poland that he was a trustee at the time. And he's the one who said we need to dissolve the trust because it was being eaten up by fees. He said that they had tried to dissolve it in 2003 and weren't able to do it. But he said it was doing nothing but being paid to Jack Cole and the trustee. He said he quit charging us to be the trustee because it was dwindling the whole thing down. And he said the best thing we could do would be to cash it out and use what little bit was left and for the village. And the only way we could do anything with it was put it in the cemetery fund.
And I don't disagree with it going into the cemetery fund. I guess my question, and Matt, correct me if I stood service wrong when we were talking about it. They felt that maybe it could have been put into a savings account for the cemetery trust and us draw out the interest to pay for her flowers or something. And, that somehow that we should have been using that $4,800 for the Coit's maintenance at the cemetery. Is that how you understood service to say that, Matt?
No, yes, 100%. That's what we discussed.
But that's not you can't do that. You got to put it in the cemetery fund. You can use it for those folks, but it has to go into cemetery fund. And at that point in time, we quit rolling stuff over. So at the end of the year, if there was some cemetery funds left, it might have got rolled over into general funds. But the
No,
thing about it is we should make arrangements to do what we can for the courts. You know, even the cemetery fund, we should, do the flowers and stuff and all, whatever it is that they are requesting. They wanted a refund for Christmas or something. We should, make arrangements in the cemetery fund to do that.
Well,
Because it went into the cemetery fund.
right, right. I agree with you, but, and I mean, because Jenny could probably do like she does for the money that we get for the mowing, track, the Coits have the $4,800 and we bought flowers for their 6x8 area that they want flowers, and we spend $75 a year or whatever, and deduct that from that, to track it. I think that's all Service was asking for, to make sure that we use that money, for the Coits.
Well, that sounds reasonable enough.
Well, that's difficult too, because other things have been done out of that cemetery fund. If it got put in the cemetery fund, it could have been used at that point in time. The state auditors were down here auditing us for that physical emergency they put us in. That's going to be a little bit difficult to go back at that point in time. What I was saying was, at this point in time, let's just accommodate the courts.
I'm sorry, Ben?
I see what you're saying, yeah.
yeah, just make sure that they get flowers every year that,
Right.
Well, yeah, accommodate them. Go ahead and.
Right, and I just need a decision to be made, because I mean, right now the Thompsons have been paying for the flowers for there.
Well, I'm not surprised at that either. But at that point in time that this was going on, the state auditors were down here auditing the books. If there had been any issues wrong about it, they did a fine tooth comb. They normally just come in and take a percentage. Until you go back 2 years, they came in and did a fine tooth comb when they did that audit. I mean, they audited everything. So there was nothing illegally going on about it. It might not have been tracked like y'all want it, but just accommodate the courts now. Make sure that they get their flowers.
So if I'm understanding correctly, as of 2009, there was $4,800 of Kuwait funds available. So over the course of the last 11 years, we feel confident that we have not used all of those funds. So to Ben's point, in theory, there still would be funds available to continue to provide them with, whatever they're asking for.
Flowers and a Christmas wreath, I think it was. And the flowers in a Christmas wreath is not really an expensive issue.
Right.
Well, Ben, it's not the Coits that we're asking for the Christmas wreath. It's a whole nother person.
Yeah, I thought that was the one.
I read the thing. I was just getting it mixed up. I said,
You're right.
Yeah, that was.
Believe me, it's confusing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. It is real confusing.
Okay, well then I have a question for finance and for Jenny. If we can't, I know that we can't set up a Coit line item. I know we can't do that. But how do we handle like the money that we receive for Ruthie Aldrich and Jane? I'm sorry, I can't remember her last name, but it was Ruthie's sister. We have all those people that donated that money. I think it's around $3,500. I don't remember a dollar amount. That Tom still has not done his memorial thing at the cemetery. How do we track that, Jenny?
that's on a PO.
Okay, so that's just a constant open PO? Or you
Yeah,
close
it's
at the end of the year and open a new one?
Nope. It's actually the 2015 PO, which is against our normal rules, but I just didn't want it to get spent. I mean, that money was all donated and I wanted to make sure it didn't get spent on anything else. So it's on the original PO.
Okay. Okay, but that's technically something we probably shouldn't be doing. We couldn't do something like that for the Coits and track it as we use it. I mean, I don't know. It's just the question.
We could, but if we're just going to use it for a wreath and a couple of flowers,
Again,
that
it's
could
not
take.
for a wreath for the Coits. It's
You
just
can't-
about $75
leave-
to $100 worth of flowers.
Yeah, you can't really leave a PO open for 20 years. Like, we're going to have to just make sure every year that we appropriate a line item of maybe $100 or whatever. We'll have to ask Cookie how much of it goes to that. What, how many graves they put those flowers on.
Right. Well, the
And-
way the Coits is situated, there's one big headstone, and then it's got those little square ones, down the sides, and that whole inside is her and Dave extended it to accommodate the family. So
We'll just have to get a rough estimate if it's $100 or if it's 150, and then every year we'll have to appropriate that much out of it.
okay. So that'll take care of the Coits.
Okay.
Okay, then that brings us down to the Hilltop Lady Cemetery Association Fund. That is the cemetery endowment. And Jenny provided the information on these. I've always seen the cemetery endowment thing on the monthly report, but I guess I just never knew that there were names associated with it. And so Jenny, you'll see that there's the original contributions for the endowment CD from the Mantua Village Hilltop Lady Cemetery Fund, that now it's ours. And I think Jenny told me it generates about $260 a year in interest. And you'll see from this list, there's all these people that we are putting flowers on. And when I say flowers, we're putting a 15-inch urn of flowers on each one of these graves, as well as, excuse me, we put 2 to 4 up in front of the mausoleum, and then they plant them in the veteran circle also. And again, the Thompson Trust has been paying for all these urns. So, and one of these people on here is a Cora Turner. And she's the one that has a codicil that she wanted flowers on her husband Russell's grave, and her sister May and herself, as well as the Christmas wreath.
But see, now on that one, it even says, if necessary, the principal shall be used.
Right.
So,
But that principal is in the 13,000, right?
yep, it
Yep.
would be part of that.
So I guess we'll have to make sure when we do the request for the cemetery Thompson Trust every year, we're going to have to start separating out the Coit flowers, get a quote for those, and a quote for the other urns for these. I think it's around 20 people here. I'm not going to sit here and count them again. And then
Why are they buying new urns every year? What do, throw the old ones away?
no, we don't get new urns.
Oh,
If we
okay.
collect them, they go up. Some years when they've gotten cracked or something like that, Urban Growers has been replacing them at no charge for us. But so no, it's no, we try to save them.
I was just wondering why in the world would they buy new urns every year?
We take, just like the hanging baskets, we take the baskets back, we take the urns back.
That's fine, that's fine.
And it's kind of interesting. I was looking back through the files, because of all this, and I saw requests going back from Carolyn Thomas Hummel, whoever used to be the cemetery board lady. And she would put together the list of all the flowers that they were getting. She would send it to the trustee, and then the trustee would send a paper back saying Coit/Thompson Trust and grant the amount for all the flowers. But he was putting them together on one, and that went on for years and years. And then the check that came with it was just the Delia Thompson Trust. So like the trustee and the courts were aware of it too. In fact, the Delia Thompson Trust paid for the Hattie Larlam Memorial. So I think that the judges, they realize that there's just so much money, and we're spending like, I think $30,000 a year just to the insurance and maybe this, similar amount to the trustee. I mean, they're getting huge amounts of money just in fees. And I think anything the village has asked for is why they're happy to grant that money. I mean, I know there's well over $1 million. It might even be, $1.5 million by now. So I think that's why they've been so generous.
Well, I do know that this year when we put in our request, he sent me back and that was in March when the economy took the big hit. And at that point, he originally said he didn't even know if he would have funds to grant anything this year. But he wanted me to wait until May. And then in May, I found out that the stock market, rose again. So we had the funds. But, and again, I don't know many of these people on here personally to know if maybe they are all related to the Thompsons. I don't know. But, the way that these are written out, it appears to be 3 different things.
It seems like at some point in time, they just put together a list and called it memorial wreaths and flowers. And I think it's a list that's combining both. And I think some of the people are on both lists. So, I mean, it's probably something the cemetery board might want to just sit down and start pouring through records and make a recommendation.
Well,
I just don't know how we keep track of all of these different funds and the approved expenses that get charged to each one of them. I'm confused.
In it.
What's that?
I said, especially if they're combining the whole thing.
Yeah.
How are you gonna ever figure that out? You're not.
Well, I mean, the Coit Trust was dissolved. So we can either do that as a village, just say we want to continue to do that for them, even though the trust is dissolved, but we don't have to create a separate fund. And then the Delia Thompson, all those records do come separately, and it's just part of the cemetery fund.
And these 2 lists that Jenny gave me, or emailed me, on these 2, she's right. Most of the names are the same on both of them. I mean, it does distinguish that the Delia Thompson one, as you guys can see, because I sent you copies of them, and the Coit, it says separate. Why? I did have Cookie took the list up to make sure that she was putting urns on all of these. And she says that's on her, she has a map of where they all go, and it all match. So no one's being forgotten, whoever is paying for it. So that's the plus side of all this. I just think maybe, council needs to decide, where we're just going to continue to, do the Thompson Trust for all of it. We do need to contact the Coit people over in Kent because they are expecting a call after we're done with our research. They did indicate, from what I understood Cookie to say, and I will verify it, that if the trust was out of money, they would be more than willing to give money towards it again. So however council wants to handle this come Tuesday night so we can make a decision, I just figured instead of hashing all this out at a council meeting, we talked about it in service. Now you guys have talked about it. You can make your decision on Tuesday night, how you want to do it.
Well,
Okay.
what if the mowing company, if they're not using up all 30 mows, what if they mowed every other time and then weed whipped? Because how often do they do that? I mean, it looks really bad, and everybody is getting complaints, and that is our responsibility. I mean, if you call any cemetery, they're going to tell you that they maintain all of that. I mean,
this year we added to the mowing contract that they mow and weed whip for Memorial Day, and they blow off the headstones as best as they can.
Most places do that every time.
Well, if you guys want to pay him more to do it,
he could just use up some of those extra mows.
Well, like I say, he is going to change it so that He's coming every 5 days now. It's not his responsibility as the mower to go and blow off people's graves. I go to my mother's grave in Garrettsville, and yes, they do mow. Sometimes they weed whip, sometimes they don't, but they don't clean any of the grass off the headstone. That's all up to me. And that's, I don't really think part of the mower's job. If you guys want to send your service department up there to do it, I mean, that's your decision to make.
What about if we
Okay,
talk
so
about
that's-
hiring seasonal help? I know we've done that in the past. We've had seasonal help. We don't have to pay them benefits. You know, a lot of times you can get college kids or young people for $11 an hour and maybe something along that route and get it looking like a decent cemetery again.
They one time a few years back, they bought a lawnmower, a long tractor, I believe it is, to mow that graveyard. I think it's in that building down. It used to be in that building down there.
Well, Ben, for one thing, it was not the correct kind of a mower. I mean, a zero turn is fine. It was just like a mower that you or my John or any of you guys would use on your lawns at home. It was not an industrial type mower to do a cemetery. It was just.
Well, that doesn't matter. All I said was that might be true. I could care. But what I said was that they bought one. That's all.
They did.
Yeah, they did.
But I've at services request, I have spoken to the mower and let him know that it was not as tidy as we are used to seeing it. And I do realize, because my husband's been mowing our lawn twice a week, sometimes 3 times a week, because of the way he wants it. And I understand where our residents want it to look good, but I mean, right now he's on a 7-day cycle. He's going to bring it down to a 5-day cycle to stay on top of it a little better. So
Hopefully it'll quit growing so fast. You can watch my yard grow.
right. Yeah. Well, this year, for some reason, it's really been growing. And to get back to the weed whipping, we did add it into the contract that he weed whip around the headstones once a month. So.
But only in July and August. Is that what you said?
July and August.
I don't feel like that's enough. It just looks scruffy all the time.
Well, that's a council decision to make. If they direct me to contact them to do it more, then we can adjust it.
Yeah, I rarely go down there, but it doesn't feel as if once a month would be adequate. So we may want to, look at that.
Especially if we're getting money for 30 mows and only using like 22, then that would give him 8 opportunities that he could go down there and take care of that.
Well, you guys think about that, and all of the council can decide on Tuesday. I mean, we could have him mow every 5 days, and in between there, send his crew up there to weed whip around the stones. But I don't think it's their responsibility, in my opinion, to blow off people's graves. Except for Memorial Day, when we want to look pristine.
Maybe not that. I mean, maybe not that, but mowing and the weed whipping, I think they should be responsible for every time.
Well, like I say, this year is the first year we added the weed whipping except for Memorial Day. So if council lets me know on Tuesday, we will pose the question and I can contact him and tell him he can use one of his extra mows to, because when they're up there, he takes a crew of 4 to 5 people to get that done, and they are usually there 8 hours, as long as the weather doesn't rain on them or whatever, because he will not go in and mow again when it's wet, because it's so wet that it turfs, is that the correct word? Turfs up the grass, and then it looks worse. So
not only that, it clogs up the moors, and down at that one end down there on the south end, the southeast end, you could get stuck.
Oh, in the hole?
Yeah, down in there, you can't even walk around down there when it's wet.
I'm sorry, if I understood you correctly, it takes 4 or 5 guys 8 hours to mow the cemetery.
Because have you been up to the cemetery to see all the headstones? And they're not most cemeteries, everything's kind of in a rows.
Yeah, yeah. I've been up there.
And
Yeah.
this one is beautiful in the way it's done, but it's a pain in the tush when
Wow.
you've got to get a zero turn mower in there to be going around headstones backing up and nothing, not all of the rows are completely straight. And then you might have a big monument to a family that's running a different direction.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, no, I totally get it. It was surprising to me to hear that.
Me too.
But so he's up there quite a while, the days that he's there.
No wonder he charged so much.
Well, Ben, you have to
Right.
stop
Linda, I'm
no.
not bothered.
The
I'm not bothered by it.
The only thing I was going to say was, until probably, I'd have to check with Dave Ackerley, until maybe 5 years ago, the village took the Ford tractor up there and did the bowl, what I call the bowl.
Yeah, I know.
And this company does it for the same price or just about the same price as what it just cost to do the upper cemetery before.
That's fine, Linda. That's fine.
No, well, I just want to make sure everybody understands.
I understand. I understood.
Okay, thank you. So that's all I had to say on the
Okay.
cemetery.
All right. Well, then we'll make a decision in council. All right. Then the last point: capital improvement charges prorate daily or leave as a monthly charge. What's this?
Our codified ordinance says that the water is $22 a month and sewer is still $2 a month. But I started getting the deposits, and I would get like capital improvements. Maybe 10 people would pay their bill. So I'm looking for about $20 in sewer capital, and I'm getting $1.10 and weird amounts like that. So I emailed her and said, are you sure that this is being done right? Because it seems like we should be getting more money. And then she said, well, what she's actually doing is prorating the capital improvement charges. And somehow that's why it's coming up with strange amounts. But I mean, to me, it seems sometimes really low. And she said it could be because somebody moved out after a couple of days or something like that. So I guess that's what Michelle sent an email, didn't she? Or was that Marianne sent? Marianne sent an email about that. Did you get that?
I don't recall.
I don't.
Okay.
I didn't get it.
Huh. Well, I guess we just have to decide, how we want to do it, because it's one of those things that the money isn't, it's not looking the way it usually does. Like you said earlier, if you ever notice a red flag, somebody should say something, and maybe it's all correct, but it just isn't like we're not getting the money in that we usually do.
What's the best way to do it?
I don't know. Maybe we need to wait and have Michelle involved in this.
I think that we need to share the email that Marianne sent questioning her explanation to you, Jenny, on how it works. If you got that, because I know it came to me and John and Michelle. I thought you were on it. And then Michelle had her response also. We need to share that with service and with finance. So that means everybody has gotten it then. The way I understood Marianne was say, Dave, you're the elected. When she does Dave's, he pays $22 for water, capital, and $2 a month for sewer. Now, if he were a renter and he moved out supposed to move out on the 1st of the month, but he didn't move out till the 5th, she prorates that difference in the final bill. And then the property owner would pay the full surcharge until the next time, unless somebody moved in later that month, and then that gets prorated again. And apparently people have been moving in and out of apartments, condos, whatever they are. It was a little confusing to me, and I thought it was going to go to service. So I think we just need to share all that information with everybody, the legislation.
Yep.
Yeah, I'd like to do that.
To get a full understanding.
Yep, I agree.
Okay,
But
and
I
then,
understand where Jenny's coming from because it has changed. We didn't really change sewer, but we did change water to 22. So,
but like that one instance, there were 9 or 10 people that paid their water bill that day, and the sewer capital improvement was $1.10.
Oh, okay, yeah, that's right.
So, yeah, I just wanted her to take a look at it because I know there's a lot to do with that program and maybe, but the codified says $2 a month.
right.
Well,
But
we
then
need
that
to-
legislation, the way it's written, is she's Michelle said, is so ambiguous to leave it open for interpretation.
Right.
And so that needs to be. I don't remember I don't have it here. It's on my computer. What number that was? It was 2016 something, was it? Or I don't remember. We'll find it and we'll get it to everybody.
Okay, yeah, get it to all of us so we can review.
Yeah, we all need to look at this a little bit
Yep.
before we make any decisions.
Right.
Okay. All right, so anything else? Any other business we need to talk about?
Nope. What are you having
Otherwise-
for dinner?
Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Aye.
Who's second?
I'll second.
All
I'll
right.
second. Sorry.
All right.
All right, everybody.
See everybody
Enjoy
at
your nice warm evening.
6:15.
You too. Pork chops, Dave.
Homemade pizza by my son-in-law.
All right, sounds good.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Hey, good night, everybody. Thanks.